What's going on, everybody? This is Amit with Mo right here. We are coming to you for, this is the first time I've ever done an in-person interview, so we'll see how this one plays out. But now we're talking, again, another Origin Junctions interview. I've known Mo for the better part of a year or so, probably a little more than that.
Yeah.
Met him here, came to New York through mutual friends, etc. And we've been talking about this and talking about his background, etc. And I thought it'd be a cool person to talk to. We're obviously coming to you from a rooftop, my rooftop, here in the city. So there'll be some latent background noise, but whatever. It is what it is. We're doing this because we're going to go out and get some food in a little bit. So we're kind of trying to do this before. But the thing was, I want to talk to Mo about is Mo has got an interesting background where he is from Iraq. First generation, born there, came here, lived in Detroit, lived in a bunch of other places, and now here in New York. But his story is pretty interesting and how that all played out. So I wanted to pick his brain on all that in general. First up, I'm going to butcher his name completely. So I'm going to have Mo just introduce himself real quick. Your full name is?
My full name is Mohammad Zalzala.
All right. Mohammad Zalzala. I always get wrong, but it is what it is. But I can read it, but I can't pronounce it too well. So real quick, Mo, what exactly do you like? Technically, what exactly do you do? Like, what is your title at the hospital?
My technical title is Pediatric Anesthesiologist.
Okay. And you've been doing that for how long?
I've been doing that for as a post-residency fellowship degree for about a year and a half now, almost. Right. Including my residency and training and all that stuff. It's been about six and a half years.
All right.
And,
So 6.5 years. All right. And then now you always hear these things about people going through medical school for God knows how many years, and I don't know the rules or whatever. So generally speaking, you were in school for how long to get this? So
basically you need 4 years of undergrad, 4 years of med school, and then however long the residency program and fellowship training afterwards that you want to do. So on average, or on minimum, usually like the lowest is internal medicine, which is 3 years residency. So that's 11 years of schooling outside high school. And if you want to do fellowship or some other subspecialty, it could be an additional 10 years on top of that. Like, for example, neurosurgery is about 7 years residency, and then on top of that, you could do a 1 to 2 years fellowship training. So you have people that don't finish their full training until their mid to late 30s, probably early 40s, depending on when they started med school, whether they took a year off here, 2 there, things like that. So, yeah.
All right. So, as with all these things in general, Mo's current occupation, as awesome as it is more the backstory. I'm curious to know about how Mo got here in general. So let's start off with there. So you're born in Iraq.
So born in Iraq, grew up in Baghdad, moved to the States when I was about 9 years old, which was, and at the time, 1992, so it was right after the first Gulf War.
Okay, so hold up, let's stop right there. Moving to the States means, like, how easy is it for somebody to move to the States from Baghdad back then when the war was going on?
Back then it wasn't that hard. I would say like the 80s were not as tough for foreigners to come into the States, even from Iraq. There was actually a pretty good relationship between Iraq and the States in the 80s. It wasn't until basically the first Gulf War when Saddam turned his back on the States and things just changed after that, so it became a lot harder. But we were working on our ability to come here before the war started.
We being who? It's
me and my family.
How many people are we talking about?
There's 6 of us. My parents and three sisters.
Okay.
And my grandma already had family that she already had other kids that were actually born in the States that lived in the States.
Okay.
So that whole process made it easier to sponsor us and get us over here.
All right.
And once we got here, we had some help from my aunt, my mom's sister, and they were able to help us get acclimated, get us jobs, get us into schools. Mind you, none of us knew English, but we all ended up somehow in the middle of West Virginia.
All right. So you're filing paperwork to get out of Baghdad.
Yeah.
Now, why? Just to live the American dream,
well,
or what was the
I think
logic?
it was a combination of. Initially it was we were taking our time because our parents just wanted what was the best for us,
Mm-hmm.
and they had this opportunity because my mom had 2 brothers and a sister that lived here in the States. So the way my parents saw it was, well, it's better for us to come here, get a better education, get better opportunities for the future. And whether we wanted to go back to Iraq or not, that ultimately ended up being up to us. The war basically just kind of sped things along. We were like, you know what, this is just not going to end very well. Might as well leave.
Hold up. So you guys were there when the war started?
Yeah, I was there during the entire thing until it ended. Actually, we moved here just after it ended, basically.
Hold up. So.
Yeah.
What's that like? I mean, you're in Baghdad, so you're in the mecca of what? I mean, again, I'm going based on what I'm seeing on CNN back in the day. I lived in Jamaica at the time, so that's my exposure was literally what I saw in the news.
Right.
What was it like? I guess
it was not what they portrayed on TV. So, most of the war occurred in the south of Baghdad, just on the border with Kuwait. The United States, from what I remember, didn't actually even go into Iraq. Only overhead. So yeah, occasionally there was like a bombing here and there, but they were targeting major infrastructures like water and electricity and things like that. So we had trouble getting power every now and then. We had trouble getting water every now and then, but for the most part, the city went along. We continued doing what we needed to do. We still went to school, we still did our thing, people still had jobs. So it was it's a little nerve-wracking to a lot of people who've never been in that situation, but you also have to remember, like, we were having a war with Iran even before that for years.
So your entire childhood was based. I mean, you had war.
The war with Iran wasn't as bad. It was more just outside Baghdad, so it didn't really bother us as much. But again, the country itself as a whole was used to being in a war for many years. So it's kind of one of those things. It's kind of like 9/11 when it happened. People went to work the next day, did what they had to do. Schools kept going. So it wasn't, you just deal with it and you move on. You can't just cower in fear because you don't know what's going to happen the next day. So
I mean, that's
right?
it sounds logical.
You've never been there. You've never seen
it sounds logical.
When it happens, you're like, all right, well,
all right.
Yeah.
So the war speeds it up. You're there for the whole war. The war ends, and then is there now a huge? I mean, your paperwork was ready in process, so it wasn't that big a deal for you guys.
We were pretty much set, ready to come here.
Okay.
At the time, because of the war, they limited flying out, so we basically had to go through Jordan. But it was not a very, hard transition.
So you guys just sold everything you had in Baghdad?
We sold our house. My grandma still has her house. We pretty much sold most of our heavy belongings.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, just took a bunch of clothes and whatever we had and came over here.
All right. Then you come over here and you go to West Virginia.
Mainly because my aunt lives there. She was able to support us, help my parents get jobs, helped us get started in school, helped us put a down payment on a house, and helped us with the rent for a few.
But you guys didn't have any. But you said you didn't speak any English.
We didn't speak any English, so we were basically the first non-English speaking people in the school that I went to. It was a very, very small town, and they actually had to create a bilingual program for me and my sister. So we had our own special little class where they would teach us English. But we learned English so quickly that the program just kind of like dissolved just as quick.
Were you guys? I mean, I'm assuming there weren't many Iraqi people or any Iraqi people in the school.
Besides my aunt, there were no other Iraqi people. I mean, her kids that were born here spoke full English. Didn't really know any Arabic at all. So to them, we were even foreigners to them because they had never seen anybody like that.
All right. So you're in West Virginia for how long?
I was there for about 3 years.
Okay.
My parents took us to Detroit to visit some family friends that they knew. We realized that there was a whole huge Arabic community there. To them, they said, well, this seems like a better opportunity for them.
It's one of the largest communities out there, right? Detroit?
It's the most condensed Arabic population outside the Middle East.
Correct. All right.
So yeah, I mean, you go around all the streets, everything is in Arabic. It's kind of like going through Chinatown in New York. It's very densely populated of all first, second, third generation Arabic people, and it grew basically predominantly because of Henry Ford, who's who offered all these great jobs at his plants. So first generation Arabic people, when they came here, they settled and had families, and it just became what it is. And you just have like 2 or 3 generations of people that have been living there their whole life, speaking Arabic, eating Arabic food, and as if it was just another city outside the Middle East, but nothing like the Middle East.
All right. So then now you're living in Detroit. These are the formidable years. You're now in high school, etc.
Yeah.
So this is where it becomes like, you're obviously now a doctor. So between, did your parents instill in you the idea of living their American dream, or your American, like, you feel, you see what I'm getting? Like, for example, like every parent has their vision of what they want their kids to be.
Yeah.
How does that play out?
Well, so I don't know they still treated us as if we were back home. Their mentality has always been our education. Their priority was our education. So they didn't care what kind of jobs we did as teenagers. They didn't care. They didn't want us to work. They were willing to sacrifice their nights and days and backs basically for us.
So you never had like a part-time job in school?
I never had a part-time job until, so my dad had, during my high school years, my dad had a auto repair shop.
Okay.
So that was my part-time job.
Got
I was basically going to help him. But it wasn't after high school. Like, it wasn't, I would get off school and then go help him out. It was one Saturday a week during school.
Okay.
And then on the summer times, then I'd be going more often during the summertime. I stopped doing that until, once I got into college, because I needed to focus more on school. And then my mom basically got us a pharmacy position at CVS, and that was my other part-time job. So basically, those were really my only 2 part-time positions that I had growing up and going to school.
And these were all high school? This is all high school?
This is high school and then into college, basically.
All right. So then college comes around. Now you finish high school. You decide to go where? Where'd you go to school?
So I went to, initially I wasn't really sure what I wanted to be.
Okay.
Senior year of high school, I remember sitting down with my parents, and they basically were trying to map out my life. And typical foreign, mentality, Middle Eastern mentality, I would say, they always try to push their kids for something that is way out there, right?
Define way out there.
Like, as in, like, the toughest of the toughest positions to get, right?
Okay.
In the Middle East, those positions tend to be in the medical field.
Okay.
So doctors, dentists, pharmacists, maybe. And then after that, it becomes more engineering, because again, it's maths and sciences. So those are generally the hardest of the hardest positions to have. So when they sat me down, they said, well, you're good at this and this, you're good at math, you're good at science, why don't you figure out something like that? And I've always liked cars. I liked engineering and things, how they work. But at the time, the job market for engineering wasn't looking very great. So they pushed me towards medicine. They never said, we would really like you to go into medicine, but they kind of like said, well, this is something that you should really consider. And the more and more I looked into it, the more I was like, okay, yeah, this is something that I would like to do.
So your sister's also in medicine then?
My oldest of the 3 sisters actually ended up going into medicine, but she eventually dropped out and started doing now forensic science. So she's doing her master's in forensic science. The other 2 wanted nothing to do with medicine. One of them ended up being a lawyer, basically. And the other one was kind of even lost in college, but she was so smart that she eventually just said, I'll just go do psychiatry, and ended up getting now she's doing her PhD in psychiatry.
Now, okay, so you're now, so
I mean, again, it's our parents, like, basically ingrained in that thought into us. They said, just do something as long. They just said basically just pushed our education and pushed education into us. So they said it doesn't matter what you end up doing as long as you're smart in what it is that you do.
But with that being said, we're looking at things that are the quote unquote upper echelon of.
I wouldn't say they're upper echelon. I'd say they're more like, not the, more of the science.
Yeah, science-driven careers.
Science-driven careers.
Okay.
Math-driven careers. Not so much the art-driven careers, like chefs and actors and things like that, because in their mind, those are very labile professions, and you don't know whether you're going to succeed or not, depending on your
So that's
talent.
the thing, right? It's the idea of having something guaranteed versus taking a risk.
Exactly.
So it's like saying, I know you're smart enough, so don't take a risk on.
Exactly. Then be safe.
Yeah.
Go the safe route. Why are you doing something that you don't know whether it's going to work out in the end or not?
All right. So then, with that safe route mentality, you obviously went to med school following that mentality, I guess, to some level.
Pretty much.
Are you somebody who now abides by this safe route mentality?
I think to some extent, I think everybody should have a good education in whatever it is that they do. Even if you want to be an actor, I applaud that, but I think like you should at least have some sort of teaching experience, some sort of like, I'm sure there's like acting schools and things that you can do.
I mean, there's Juilliard.
So I think like if you're going to do that and you really want to take it seriously, then maybe that's something that you should really consider and do.
All right.
Instead of just trying to do it on your own and as they say, and trying to be discovered,
True. All right. But now here's the thing, though, right? So I've always battled this little interesting thing, right? So I'm Indian, which means we have the same mentality you guys have, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So everyone's like, hey, get something that's consistent, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up going down that field initially in college, and it is what it is. But what I've come to realize in my circle is people go, or your parents go, I need you to do something consistent or something safe, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't abide by that, you're not shunned, so to speak, but you aren't. Your mom's not talking you up at the cocktail party.
Absolutely.
However, if you manage to strike it rich, in whatever level this may be, all of a sudden you're the king of the world. You're the smartest person ever.
Right.
Education be gone.
Right.
Because now you're rich.
Right.
So now, so with that being said, is education the key, or is making money the key? Like, what truly are like you? Do you feel your parents really care about the fact that you have education, or that now that you can be a wealthy person?
I think my parents care more about education than luck.
Okay.
So, I will say like they definitely prefer you be educated, and the example I give is because one of my youngest sister loved to cook throughout high school, and we actually considered sending her to a culinary school. But they realized that it's super expensive. At the time, like my parents weren't wealthy enough to be able to offer that. And she had gotten a full ride to college to U of M. So they said, you know what, be safer, go to U of M, find something that you like to do. And she did well. I mean, granted, like she didn't chase her dream as most other people would say, but the way I see it is like, do well in school, get a good career, get a good job, and those things will follow. If you still want to chase those dreams and want to do that thing, it's never too late to actually go after it, right?
But it is though.
Not necessarily. I mean, the way I see it, it's like, I would love to work with cars all day, every day, right? Like, I would love to engineer. I would love to be an engineer and go work on Formula One driving cars. But those jobs are not easy to come by.
True.
They're extremely hard. You have to have a really good education from a really good school. And let's not kid ourselves. The name of a school, when it comes to the school that you go to, the name definitely matters.
True.
Regardless of how smart you are, the name matters.
True.
So if you don't have the money or the ability to go get into those schools to begin with, then you're not going to be able to go the route that you had set in mind. So the way I see it is like, okay, well, that's fine. I don't need to work on Formula One cars. I could enjoy them. I could afford to buy a nice car and drive like them and travel like them and do those things. So that's why I chose what I did, because it allows me to afford to do those things because of my education and because of my experience. And it's the same thing with my sisters. I mean, they're not... Their jobs don't afford them that abilities, but they're comfortable, they're happy, they're content. They do have a nice life, and they can definitely succeed in their careers and make those other dreams happen.
Well, I guess the thing is, right? So I always look at it where you have immigrant parents or immigrant families want a lot for their kids, understandably, and they should, right? But all these families want what they didn't have, right? Generally speaking, right?
Well,
so, or
depends.
Okay.
I mean, some of those families just they come from families of doctors, so they want their kids to be doctors.
Which is
and if they're
that's
not
anything.
Doctors,
Yeah.
And if they're not doctors, then they're not going to be happy. Even if they become successful lawyers, they still might not be happy with them. I mean, that's just how the families are, and that's what they're known for. So they feel hurt when their kids say, I don't want to do what you do. I want to do something else completely different.
All right. So you go into med school. You are now an anesthesiologist, pediatric anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
Why pediatric anesthesia?
I've always liked working with kids. It's really that simple. I initially wanted to do ENT, or ears, nose, and throat, and because that profession allows you to work with kids and adults, half the time. But that didn't work out, so then I ended up going into anesthesia. And when I did anesthesia, I thought about whether I still wanted to do pediatrics, because it's a much more riskier, much more difficult field. But I enjoyed it so much that I decided to spend another year.
So the risk reward was part of it?
Oh, absolutely.
So you like the risk?
It's not the risk. No, it's by no means does it give me a thrill to see a child.
No, I'm not. I didn't mean it that way. Yeah, but it's more difficult though.
It's definitely more difficult. But the reward basically is just me being able to enjoy myself around kids. Like, I like working with kids. They bring a smile to my face. Anything that usually happens to them in those kind of situations, in the medical field, it's usually not their fault. They're sick because, they have some sort of disease or genetic disorder. It's usually because they swallowed something inadvertently because they don't know any better, right? So when I see them, and, they're always smiling, they're always happy, and to me that, that always makes me happy as well. In the adult world, it's not the case. It's usually they're very sick. A lot of them don't take care of themselves like they should, and that is a little bit more tough, because you want to take care of these people, but it's like you're stuck in this dilemma where, like, they don't deserve it, but it's just like, it's hard to take care of somebody who's 350 pounds on your table, who has full-blown diabetes and kidney failure, and they'll sue you if you don't take care of them. They'll sue you for accidentally chipping their teeth or something like that, because you had a hard time putting the breathing tube in. You know what I mean? So it's little things like that. And that's why I chose kids, because when I work with them, it's always a good time. It's always a fun time. They're always laughing. They're always smiling. So.
All right, and then why New York?
I love big cities. I came here for an interview, actually, when I was interviewing for general surgery / ENT, and I just remember this one moment where I landed in JFK, and I took the train directly into the financial district where I was going to be staying. And the train goes underground, so you don't see anything right outside the train. You don't see the big skylines or anything like that. But the minute I walked out of the train station and all I see are big, tall buildings, I just had this sense of, like, home. Like, I belong here. Like, this is where I need to be. So ever since then, I've always chased after big cities. And I guess it's just kind of like because of where I grew up. Baghdad is a big city itself. Detroit is a large city as itself. So I just kind of like got used to that, and I've always wanted to see if I can make it in the hardest of the hardest cities.
So do you go back to Baghdad, or have you been back?
I've been back twice since we left. Once was in 2000, just before 9/11, and Saddam was still in power at the time. And once in 2013, after the second war, and so there was a huge contrast between the two.
And your city, when you went back, your city was still, I mean, was it the Baghdad you remembered? Meaning, I mean, it's been through war, that's what I'm asking, not a matter of thinking.
I mean, I left when I was 9, so I kind of vaguely have an idea of what my city was like, and it was nice. When I went back in 2000, there was a lot more fear. People were definitely more afraid of what to say, where to say it, what to do. they were very accepting of the fact that, the, 2 hours of the morning and 2 hours of the night, the electricity goes out, and that's just a part of life, versus 2013, where things are, right after the war, things are a little bit improving, but then it's a different type of fear now. It's not so much fear about what you say, but it's a fear about where you go. People are scared, like, if I go into this building or this cafe or this city, am I going to get bombed? And, because of, you have all these jihadists that, that think that what they're doing is what's best for us. So it's a different mentality. It's a different feeling. That being said, again, when I went back 3 years ago, the people there were doing their thing. They went to school, they worked, they didn't let that, fear get the best of them.
But
they still had hope. And
when you go back now, are you the American guy? Like, are you coming? Like, are people looking at you differently?
I definitely stand out. I mean, the color of my skin alone, makes me stand out.
Uh-huh.
Let alone, my hair and the outfit or the clothes I wear. That being said, that doesn't mean that they dress any differently. They still dress just like Westerners: jeans, t-shirts, button-ups, whatever. But my Arabic is definitely not as fluent as it was when I was a kid. The color of my skin definitely stands out. People there are generally a little bit darker, so I'm definitely more of a target there. And so when I do go out, I always have to be with my cousins, because I don't know where I'm going, first of all, and second of all, I don't know who I'm going to run into and who that person is. So when I was with them, I wasn't afraid of anything. I was fine, comfortable walking around, no issues. So
now, being that you came here so young, but you remember enough. You came here, you had enough time there to build an identity, as a person, obviously, and then you come here, and then now you in essence have to recreate yourself to some level, right? Just because you have to adapt, if you will.
Yeah, it's you kind of just. We were learning English basically before we came here. It still wasn't good enough to get us anywhere. But again, I was a kid. I didn't really know any better or any differently. I basically just started a new school with these Americans, and the teachers were unbelievably nice and very patient with us, and took great care of us, even up to the principal, who knew us personally, individually.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Well, how do you identify yourself? Like, do you consider yourself, because America's very big nowadays on you have to fit into some bracket, whatever, or some group, creed, et cetera. Do you identify yourself?
I think about that all the time, and every time I see something on the news that makes me wonder, do I want to be associated with the Middle East? And I still say, I am a Middle Eastern person. I still say I'm Iraqi. Not because I was born there, but just because that's what I, grew up knowing. And I enjoy, the food, the culture, the music, everything about it. I like the mentality of how the people think over there. And so I still see myself as an Iraqi. At the same time, I'm also an American, but what is American?
No, I'm with you
know
there.
What I mean?
Yeah.
There's no one, exact definition of what an American is. You could be, a new foreign person that just basically moved here, and you can call yourself American, versus somebody who's, a white American, basically, who's had years and years of generations since their family came here back in the 1700s. So it's just, I think that's an American. Anybody who wants to be here and basically just be part of all this. I don't think there's exactly one definition.
No, and the reason I asked the question is because my parents are Indian. I'm first generation American. But I didn't do the India thing. Like, I didn't grow up there. I don't know. So for me,
right.
my India experience is based on my parents. Mm-hmm. So even though I'm Indian technically, because they are, I don't really have any true identity with India.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that for me, it's and people go, oh, your mother country, whatever. not for me. It's not like I grew up in Jamaica. That's my mother country. Like that mentality makes sense to me. That's why I'm curious to know for you for the same scenario. I guess.
mean, for me, the way I see it is like, you know, when people ask me that, I kind of gauge what the person is trying to figure out who I am.
Got it. Okay.
And I think they're more asking about what my background is as opposed to, you know, what nationality.
Got it.
Right? Like there's you know, there's pride in your country that you live in, and then there's your background of what you grew up in. You know what I mean? I have friends that grew up here, who born here, and they look, sound, you know, don't even know anything about the Middle East, but they still call themselves Iraqi. You know what I mean? Like that's just how they are because they grew up in a household that
supported all
eats
of it.
Middle Eastern food, that listens to Arabic music, that, you know, that still has even if they're not religious, has a Quran sitting in the corner somewhere. You know, so it's just part of it. It's kind of like, I think those people are just trying to, and like me, basically trying to hold on to where we came from. And I think it's great. You know, it's kind of like trying to basically say, you know what, there's more than one type of person out there, and it's great to experience that. So, because if you come here and you don't continue to experience that, then the next generation is just going to lose it.
Yeah.
And they're going to not know it as well. They're not going to appreciate it as well. And they're probably never going to visit it either.
That's the thing. That's the truth right there.
So, you know, like I know a lot of Chaldeans and Iraqis that were second generation that were born in Detroit, but have never seen Iraq, don't know any Arabic, and they call themselves Iraqi. So it's kind of like, okay, well, yeah, that's great, but at the same time, you've never been there.
Yeah.
You don't care to learn Arabic. You don't care to even like know how to cook or make an Arabic meal. So it's kind of sad to see that happen.
I'm that dude. Right? I mean, I'm not that bad, but I feel you. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
So it's, you know, there's a lot of people like that, and I get offended when people say, well, you're here, weren't you American?
Nah,
like,
but that's yeah. There is no American is everybody, obviously, off us.
I mean, that's what makes America what it is. It's not one type of personality.
Yeah.
It's a country that basically allows you the ability and freedom to do what you want to do, be what you want to be. So
coming to the guy who got here and now he's a doctor and saving kids, and the guy on the other side who's neither of these things. With that being said, I've taken a good amount of Mo's time. We're gonna get some food, but thank you guys for sticking around and meeting Mo. And we'll be doing this. Well, he and I are going to hang out after just get some food and beverage. But check us out. There's more videos at originjunctions.com. I'm continuing to build this. Obviously, it's still new. It's still in its infancy. So if you have any thoughts, ideas, people that I should talk to, or people who want to be interviewed, or people who have a story to share, please let me know. Reach out at originjunctions.com. Send me an email, etc. Let me know what your thoughts are, and hopefully keep this going. Thanks again for the time. Have a good day, guys. Enjoy your Saturday. Or whatever day it is for you by the time you're watching this. Talk soon.